we're going to go back to Dr. Cook, who's Chair Boating and Law Enforcement Committee. In keeping with the previous meeting, I'm going to suspend the committee rules and allow this to be a discussion with the entire commission. Dr. Cook will be in charge and recognize those asking questions. Dr. Cook, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Boating and Law Enforcement Committee would like to recognize Lieutenant Cape Taylor, and his Cape's coming up. I'm a little slow on the uptake, so most of the commission probably understands this, but there's two systems here. We have the Tennessee Advanced Communication Network, which is been in place for about 2 years. It's a statewide network with multiple agencies from TBI, FBI, TDOT, TDEC, all the alphabet soups that we have. And it gives them the ability to communicate within all the different agencies. So, for example, THP has spent $125 million in order to have their portion of it set up. We've spent $7 million from the agency to be able to be in the communication network. And that's just the towers and the satellite systems and the equipment that sends the signals, but we don't have the ability to get on that system. And that's what all this is about, is because we have a $7 million investment, but we can't get on it really. So that's what this is about.
Thank you, Chairman Cook. What we've done is we've asked a couple of, can you hear me now? There you go. I didn't set it up. I just walked. We've asked a couple of individuals.
And he's going to talk to
come
us
in.
about communication system.
Obviously. Thank you for that vote of confidence. We've invited a couple of individuals to come in and talk to us about the computer-aided dispatch system and the report management system. They're going to be talking to us about the capabilities these systems have and the benefits that they could bring toward our agency to complete what Dr. Cook was talking about, the radio system that we've completed and gotten all that in place. And this is something that goes along with that to help us with our dispatch system and getting the information back out of that system. First person that we brought up is Michael Snyder, and then after he gets completed with his program, Colonel Ryder is going to be introducing our next speaker. I'll give you Michael Snyder.
Let me turn the microphone around a few times. Let's see if I can get to our slides here. Well, I'm having that same challenge. Sure is that one right here. This one? Yes, sir. Yeah. Very cool. I think we're all set now. I want to thank everyone for allowing me to come in today and talk about the computer-aided dispatch system. I'm going to try to keep this brief, and I'm going to try to limit the number of acronyms that I'm using to describe the system and so forth that we're talking about. Very quickly, basically, like the Lieutenant Colonel said, is we're looking at a couple of different pieces of software. And what that is intended to do is help your officers in several different ways. The first one being the computer-aided dispatch system, which is what you use to manage calls for service, manage where your officers are in the field, what they're doing, what they're working on, so that you can maintain the safety of those officers in case they're in need of help. We also use GPS location information from either the radios that are on their hip or the radios in their vehicles or the computers that they have in their vehicles as well. The records management system, that's basically meant to manage all of the reports that the officers have written in the field. And then, of course, the field-based reporting piece of that is the tools necessary for the officers to actually do the reporting in the field. Things like issuing citations, hunter accident reports, activity reporting, boat accident reports, whatever type of report necessary, it's what allows them to do that in the field and not have to come back to the office, not have to turn in paperwork, which then gets keyed into other systems, and in other words, takes a lot of time. And then we're also, one last piece of that is another mobile piece that the officers would use is software on a laptop that allows them to do license checks, check to see if the person is suspended in other states, and just as importantly is do checks with the FBI systems, the NCIC system, to find out if someone has a valid driver's license, to find out if they're wanted somewhere, if they're driving a stolen vehicle, or if they are a dangerous person that you may be out with. So those are the different pieces that we're giving right to the officer in the field, with the primary mission being the officer's safety. All right. And it's not moving. Oh, now it comes up as soon as you come up here. Here I am talking about technology, and I'm technology prohibited, I guess. One of the things that I'll talk about as well is this is, like you heard from Bran a few minutes ago, the system that we're talking about now is the same exact system that's in place with Georgia Department of Natural Resources, with Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation, as well as the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. It's integrated together. Each of the different pieces that we're talking about are integrated together, and it's also integrated to be able to query the branch system to provide that license information and so forth to the officers that are in the field. Let's see if I can get it the first time here. One of the examples here, Florida Fish and Wildlife implemented their system many years ago, about 10 years ago. They are the second largest law enforcement agency in that state. They have about 750 mobile computers deployed, about 75 different workstations and offices around the state. And they issue approximately 49,000 boating citations, traffic citations, resource violations, boat crash reports, and so forth annually. And those are all done within the mobile software that we're talking about. All right, so what are the benefits to the system, to the state? The biggest one is what I mentioned a minute ago. It's that integration of location information to the dispatch centers, to the dispatchers, as well as to the officers in the field. So what we're going to do is we're going to leverage the radio system and the infrastructure that you've put in place and allow that GPS information from the officers' radios to be sent in and utilized right within the CAD system, the computer-aided dispatch system, as well as on the maps and so forth that they'll use at that dispatch center. So that dispatcher is going to be able to see exactly where the officers are, and if they have a need for help, they can immediately select in the CAD system the closest officers that can respond to that location, even how far away they are based off of current driving conditions and so forth. All of those, another benefit, of course, is that every element that's done in our system, every call for service that you respond to gets documented and has a resolution to it. So every license check, every boat stop, everything has a resolution that you can document and then report on. And then the last benefit that you'll see here is that in putting this system in, we're actually going to be consolidating 6 different systems that were built in-house currently. You have activity reporting, you have citations, you have incidents, wild hog reports, TIBERS reports, and so forth. TIBERS being the incident reporting system that goes to the state and then ultimately to the federal government as far as crimes are, crime statistics and so forth. This slide I'm going to go through it very, very quickly, but basically the radio system that you've put in place recently has the ability, like I said a minute ago, for the GPS information to come right from the radios. And this is just a picture of that information going from the radios into our computer-aided dispatch system, and then that information is relayed out to all of the laptops in the vehicles so that not only am I able to see where a specific officer is from the dispatch center, but each officer is actually able to see where every other officer is and what they're doing, what they're working on in case there is an emergency. So they can immediately see where they are. And if you may or may not be familiar with every one of these radios has a little orange button on the side of them. What that is a panic button. That panic button, if pushed, and if that's the only thing that officer can do, that panic button will issue a notice to our CAD system, which immediately notifies the dispatcher and every officer around that another officer has pushed the panic button on their device, and it immediately displays where they are, creates an event for other officers to be dispatched to. So a huge focus on the safety aspect of it. And this is basically what I just talked about. It's the panic mode or a panic button from the radio system. There's also one within our software as well. So if they need to, they can select the panic button in the software, and it would do the same function as the panic button on the radio. Basically, there's 4 different pieces of product. I'm not going to belabor this point because I've talked about a lot of it so far, but there's 4 basic products that the system is made up of. It's the computer-aided dispatch system. It's the same exact dispatch system that's currently used in the state of Florida and the state of Georgia, South Carolina as well. So it's a very robust CAD system intended and built for your specific operations and for other state law enforcement operations as well. It tracks officer assignments. It tracks not only what they're working on at the moment, but if you have a need to track additional elements. For example, I'm on a specific lake doing a specific type of check, then everything that was done during the day, every citation that was issued, every check that was made would also be correlated to that specific lake or reservoir for ease of reporting purposes without any additional effort by the officers in the field. And then the mobile side of it, and some of these things may or may not mean anything to y'all, but basically what it means is two-factor authentication means that we meet all of the FBI's requirements for using FBI's data in the field. So they've got very specific encryption requirements and so forth that of course we meet. And we use mapping technologies in our mobile products as well as our dispatch system that you would be familiar with already. The types of map data, we can display any type of map data in the field, including wildlife management areas, topology maps and so forth, imagery, anything that you would want and could be of a function into the officer in the field is available to them. And we do a lot of queries into other systems. So if I want to do a query of a person's driver's license, because I don't necessarily believe that they are who they are presenting, then I can query the state system, bring back a picture of their driver's license, verify that they are in fact the person they say they are, and in fact the person on their hunting license, and then make my decision from there. In the field-based reporting piece, this has basically all, like I said earlier, all of the different reports that your officers would utilize in the field. And basically what that boils down to is you can define what types of reports are available and more specifically what types of rules that are applicable to them. So if I'm in a certain situation, I have to collect certain bits of information that need to be turned in. And you can control all of that as an agency to make sure that your reports are consistent. There's a huge man-hour savings in the integration that we have between different pieces of software. For example, right now, if you investigate a boating accident, you've got a report that you fill out for a boating accident. You've got a citation that you may have to fill out. If you're going to have the vessel towed, you may have another report that gets filled out to have the vessel towed. All of those things are integrated in our system. So I say I want to create one thing, and it feeds all of the information that the officers collected into the other reports, saving them a significant amount of time. And that's a few more items that I'm going to activity report, a few different report types that I may not have covered a second ago, but other items that you'll see as well in the software. One big key to our system is also the ability to get data out of the system. You know, you guys were talking about that a few minutes ago. We were talking about the licenses and so forth, but one of the things that we focused on is we've got a system that collects a lot of information about a lot of different events that happen in the state, and we want to have the ability to get that information back out. So we've got some great dashboard tools. We've got GIS or map-based tools that allow you to do geographical queries and ad hoc queries for any and everything that's in our system, and then present that logically, graphically, or list-based, depending on whatever your needs are. This is just a slide about training and support and so forth, that of course, any system that you put in place that's based in officer safety is a 24/7 support system is necessary. What are the results? What are the proven results of a system like this in place? It's to improve the officer safety, like I said. It's to reduce the amount of time that it takes to do the job. What we don't want to do is put technology in the hands of users just for the sake of technology. We want to put technology in their hands to make their job more effective and efficient. It should not take you more time to do the job you've been doing previously. It should take you less. We want to reduce the amount of duplication and the errors that come in different reports. We want to have accountability and auditability with the information that we gather. And we want to have compliance with accreditation and other standards. So those are built into the tools. And we want to be able to share information with other agencies so that you've got information that may be beneficial to other agencies. Other agencies may have information beneficial to you. For example, information about events that happen in Georgia or Florida or other states are very important to you. Last picture there is an image of a Florida Fish and Wildlife boat with a laptop computer mounted into it. And that's just where I was going to leave that final slide to show you that. It is possible to put a laptop computer on a boat. And in fact, it's not uncommon for them to be mounted on ATVs, john boats, kayaks, and so forth. Thank you very much. Obviously open to questions.
Is Major Adams going to speak, or what is it? Do you want to do that now, or would we rather? Let's go with questions now. I'll start with a question.
Yes, sir.
So on the panic button, since we're in this integrated system, say the officer hits his panic button, it's going to go to Highway Patrol, local city police, sheriff's departments, everyone in the area will know that. Is that correct?
It is entirely possible to do that. Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, obviously our officers work in remote areas. Is this
Right.
dependent on them being able to have an internet signal or a Wi-Fi, or how does that work?
Excellent question. Obviously, if you want to do queries of systems, if you want to be able to check someone's driver's license from the remote machine, you have to have connectivity. So it typically utilizes a cellular data capability, either tethering it to your phone or having a dedicated data modem or whatnot. But from the reporting aspect of it, we recognize that there are a lot of people that work in remote areas. So all of the reports that we have available can be done completely offline. We've got all the tools necessary right on the laptop to do any type of report, gathering any bit of information necessary, and then when they have connectivity, we send that information into our servers and so forth. So it's definitely made for remote use right from the beginning.
When someone's in trouble and hit the panic button, it doesn't go off. I mean, it goes off sort of like maybe a Spot. Are you familiar with the company Spot?
Not specifically, no, sir.
It's just a reporting device that goes off satellite to transmit a 911 call, even if you're in the ocean 100 miles off out of
Right,
cell range. Is that the same type of thing for the panic button?
Well, with the panic button, it depends. There's two ways that we're actually utilizing the panic. The one of them is directly from the officer's radios. So as long as the radio itself is in connectivity to the radio system, then when they press that panic button, part of that information is going to be their location and who the officer is that hit the panic button on the radio. If they push that button within our laptop software, then it's obviously based off of whether or not that laptop is able to connect to the system at that point.
But what if it's not in contact with either is my question.
Well, if it's not, then there are satellite-based options available, but then you move into definitely a cost issue. And we haven't had with Georgia and Florida. They do have some of their offshore via vessels do have satellite data capabilities built into those. So it's something that they've taken into consideration for that type of deployment.
Commissioner McMillan, our discussion before, wasn't it true that looking around the state, there's some dead zones, but it's pretty small, that it wouldn't cover the radio and any other system, right? It's a pretty small area.
That I wouldn't know for as far as the radio
that's-
coverage.
Darren said yes.
If I could, the possibility of not having connectivity by Wi-Fi through your computer or by your radio system is going to be nearly zero in the state. I mean, there's places where you don't have Wi-Fi connectivity, and there's places where the radios don't get out. But the chance that that would happen, where neither one would get out, are very slim.
I have another question, if I may. If the dispatcher gets a complaint that there's a citizen having trouble with a bear in some remote area, does the system keep up with when the report goes into the officer?
Absolutely.
And when the officer is on site responding to that complaint?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we track each one of those events, when the call came in, when it was the officer notified, when the officer got to that location, how long he was there, or when did they clear that location, and so forth.
And that data is retained, so we could look and say, you know, this is our
Absolutely.
average response time, or this is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
And not only we do that as well, but we also keep track of the method of transportation that the officers might be using. So when the dispatcher makes a decision to send an officer, it can be based off driving time, but, you know, it's just as likely that if an event is on a lake, then you're going to need to know that the officer's in a boat on the lake versus in a vehicle driving around the lake. So that it's intelligent enough to make that logical decision or suggestion for the dispatchers.
Will the dispatcher be looking at a screen or with a map that will show where our officers
Absolutely.
are all the time?
All the time, yes, sir. Where the officers are as well as where the events are.
Any other questions? Director Carter, do you have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. The next presenter we're going to have now that uses a system, a CAD system, and he's going to provide comments and of benefits, where they were, where they are, and some lessons learned. But I know I shouldn't say this. I was going to secure the door before I said this, but you got to understand, I appreciate Colonel Henderson from Georgia DNR allowing Major Stephen Adams to come present, but I was really concerned they may not show up after they blew my phone up in the Georgia game. And then with 16 seconds, I got to blow their phone up. So I didn't say a whole lot. When a couple weeks later, Vanderbilt traveled between the hedges. I ain't even gonna go there with Stephen because he may not come up here. But Stephen Adams is their major with the Georgia DNR that utilizes a CAD system. So I'd appreciate if he'll come up here and make comment.
Darren, there's even a limit as to how many of the rules I can suspend here. We're on the edge right now.
You didn't know I was gonna say that?
No, I didn't. I was shocked earlier. We were talking back there, and I asked Darren about Modern Farms deer season, and he said, "Oh, it doesn't start for a couple of weeks." And I said, "Well, all these people wearing orange around here. I thought it already started." So go dogs. Say it quietly. Again, I'm Stephen Adams. I'm our Special Operations Major with Georgia DNR, and I'll tell you, I hope that I can give you a little bit of information of where we were at and how we got to where we're at. I've certainly learned some stuff from y'all already. We don't have brownies at our board meetings, but I'm going to go back and suggest that. So y'all have got it going on up here. So thank you for having me. I'm just going to talk briefly. We went to the computer-aided dispatch in 2010. Prior to that, our officers relied on either an office secretary to dispatch them or a county on a local radio system. There was really no accountability. There were no laptops in vehicles. Most of our officers use personal computers at home on a privately paid dial-up or cellular modem or whatever to do their reports. And then we had a little catalyst for change. 2008, I was a captain in this area down on the coast, and one of my officers was going into work an evening roost shoot And Chatham County is the county that Savannah, Georgia's in. Probably some of y'all are familiar with that. And he was shot with a 7 mag in the chest by a trespassing deer hunter. He only had a VHF radio. I don't want to get real technical, but a Southern Link, which is an IDEN cell phone, didn't work very well, and a personally owned cell phone. Some other officers knew that he was out working, didn't know exactly where he was at. He was able to call for help, and luckily it was not a felonious assault. It was just a trespasser thought he was a deer, and he rendered aid. He's still shot. That doesn't change the fact that he's been shot in the torso with a high-powered rifle. But when he called 911, the cell signal where he was at went to the neighboring county. So he's on a cell phone trying to tell people that he's on a railroad right-of-way in the middle of the woods. Took a little while to get folks to him. Luckily, the hunter did not want him dead. He could have very easily walked away and he'd have been dead, but this was our catalyst for change, and shortly after that, we started moving forward. It's something we'd always wanted to do, to have some type of 24-hour dispatch. Georgia has 159 counties, and as y'all know, we're the largest state east of the Mississippi, so it was a challenge to do that. We put together a committee to look into the options of a computer-aided dispatch system and using a statewide radio system, and we started looking at other states. Florida had recently gone to a system that we decided to look at. Their Florida Highway Patrol, Department of Ag, and other agencies are on it. So we thought our state patrol had just started, so we decided to do a pilot project. We did it down in Region 7, which is the coastal region where I was a captain at the time, and GSP, the Georgia State Patrol Troop I, sort of lines up nearby on it. And we were able to use some existing money to put 32 computers in the front of our patrol vehicles and see how it worked. We already had a statewide VHF radio system. I'll go ahead and tell you it's not nearly as advanced as the system y'all have now. I'm very envious of it. It's a very good system that y'all have statewide. But we tied those into the dispatch center using Motor Bridge. It's a Motorola technology so that we could talk. Someone asked earlier what the dispatcher sees. This is a communication center with the state patrol. On the left, there's 4 screens there. On the left is the radio resources. Then there's the, I think that's just the internet. And then the call is the black-looking screen. And then to the right is the map. So they're looking at a lot of information. And we're tied in Georgia with the state patrol. We see the troopers see us, and one dispatcher dispatches for both. The pilot was a success, and we were able to get a general obligation bond from the General Assembly in the amount of about $1.2 million to put the program out statewide. About that time, I went to headquarters, and because I'd had a little experience at it, Special Operations has a lot of things that don't really fit anywhere else, and I was dubbed to be the CAD guy as well. And we started deploying these, and we started out with just a Dell ruggedized computer and a mobile printer. And there were some challenges with that, putting laptops and printers in trucks, but we figured out how to do it. And prior to this, anybody who was below a sergeant with us, was sergeant as a field supervisor, they didn't have a state purchased computer. So when they did work for us, they were doing it on a home computer. So this was huge just from the simple fact of giving them a computer. Currently, we have done one refresh since 2010. We're using Panasonic Toughbooks. They've worked very well with us, and then supervisors use the CF53. It's a semi-rugged computer, and they work very well. They're significantly cheaper, and we decided to do those with supervisors. We use a mobile thermal printer and also have scanners in our trucks. So we can scan documents, print documents, get on the internet, as well as the CAD. They're in all our vehicles. It's part of our rigging package. It's airbag compliant system so that the officer is safe. That's something that we were really concerned about, is when the vehicle was involved in a crash, that airbags would not deploy and dislodge a laptop and it become a flying object that would hit an officer. And we were able to circumvent that. And as the previous presenter had said, we've been able to put these computers on a lot of different things. On the left is one of our coastal safe boats, and that's one of the bigger examples. We've got them on some pretty small patrol boats too. And then on the right, that's a Pelican case that one of our officers has put a radio and a laptop with a power supply and everything. and that can be thrown on the front of an ATV into a canoe or whatever, so he's got a mobile office in a Pelican case. Training, I'm just talk a little bit about how we got to where we're at. Training was eye-opening for me. I didn't realize the level or lack of computer skills that some of our officers had, and I think the colonel said y'all have already had laptops here, so you're probably above where we're at. But we had to show folks where the power button was the first day. It was kind of enlightening. But we did 2 days of training on how to use the system, and then we also have to do additional training so that officers have access to GCIC, the Georgia Crime Information Center, which is NCIC data, which you would have. And there's some security requirements for that, security and integrity, and then what you can do with it. This is just a screenshot I took when I was putting this together off of my CAD, and it shows in the center there, you see a circle around a dot. That's where our headquarters is and my badge number. And you see other cars there. If they're in red, they're on a call. If they're green, they're in service. And that just graphically displays where they're at. It's pretty user-friendly. There's messages, which are messages from the dispatch center. There's a chat feature. The CAD, which is for running tags and things like that. And then if you look at the top, if you want to run a person, a vehicle, a vessel, an article, a gun, business, or whatever. This is a screenshot. Someone had asked earlier, did it log? The system we use logs calls. This is what an officer sees in the front of the truck. To the right, those numbers that are running in a column from top to bottom, 2, 5, and 8, and all that, that's the officers that are on duty. If the dot is yellow, I'm 05, I'm the second one. That means I've had a GPS location, I think within the last 5 minutes. I had just taken it out of the dock at the office. 2 is one of our lieutenant colonels. He had been at the office for a little while, but if you look down to 13, he's green. That's a valid location to where he's at, so you can tell. And if you go all the way down to 23 or to D0223, my eyes are getting bad, you can tell he's in red. He's doing something. You look to the left and you see he's on a DNR hunting complaint. I didn't show it on here, but you can click on that and there's notes. It can be hunting without permission. The officer can put in notes. The dispatcher can put in notes. We've used this extensively for things like significant hunting and boating incidents, when an officer gets on scene, when a med unit arrives, when things happen that need to be time-stamped. The officer can put it in. He can use the radio or whatever to record those events, and it's in a log that you can get from now on. There's also mobile forms, and mobile forms is nothing but a folder of different forms that an officer would use. If you look to the left under our seal there, there's a boating incident, which we use. Our system is configured to, the vendor would have to verify this. I think it's every night at midnight we do a dump to BARD, which is the U.S. Coast Guard Boating Accident Report Database. So secretary doesn't have to copy forms anymore and send them to the Coast Guard. We're required to get federal boating dollars to do that, and it's an automated system. There's a 2-step approval process where the supervisor approves it, and then it's also another approval by a supervisor, and then once those 2 approval processes have happened at midnight that night, it automatically ports into BARD.